Hey guys, so this is my review of the Hilton Tokyo Odaiba. As you can see, I'm not in the hotel anymore. I've actually stayed there for the past 3 months, around 3 months, and I wanted to give it a little bit of time before I make the review, just to, give me some space to think about which parts I liked, which parts I didn't like, and so on. So I'm trying to approach this from a regular guest perspective. Obviously, if you stay in a hotel for long term, like 3 months, then certain aspects become more important and certain other aspects are less important. But let me just try to do that in the same way that I did with all the other hotels. So let's talk first about price and location. I think this is usually something you want to get out of the way right in the beginning. Ultimately, the Hilton Tokyo Odaiba is not the most expensive hotel and not the most expensive Hilton either. There's 2 Hiltons in Tokyo, and the term Odaiba in the name is also the location. So Odaiba is this small artificial kind of island that's a bit in the south of Tokyo, and it has certain pros and cons to it. I think it depends on what kind of traveler you are, but basically, if you want to access the city center a lot, then you'd be better off, visiting the Hilton Shinjuku, which is super central. The Hilton Tokyo Odaiba is a bit further out, and you only have 2 train options, and one of them, the Yurika line, is quite expensive. So it's a bit further out, but the advantage is you actually have beach access. I'm not sure if you're allowed to swim, to be honest, because I never saw anyone really swimming in the beach, but you definitely have the beach, and it's like a nice hangout spot in the evening. You also have some malls, like bigger malls, that you usually don't see in the center of Tokyo because there's simply no space. There's a bunch of food courts around as well, so that's quite nice. So let's talk about the hotel itself. Let me show you the rooms first, and unfortunately I didn't take a video in the beginning when it looked nice, so apologies for my stuff being all over the room. So my room was a slightly bigger one. There was a slight upgrade, around 44 square meters. You have a balcony, and depending on where in this rounded shape of the building you are, you might have the chance to get incredible stunning views of the sunset, of the Rainbow Bridge, as well as just the water in front of your hotel, which is super nice. Some of the hotel rooms also don't have such a nice view, so you might want to ask them where they can put you, in terms of direction of view for the rooms. Otherwise, you might be a bit disappointed. The rooms themselves, and I'd argue the entire building, is a bit on the older side. I don't know when it was built, but you can really sense it that it has seen some, let's say, better days. Not to say that it's old in a negative way. It just feels design-wise a bit old-fashioned, but overall it's quite luxurious and comfortable, I have to say. As you can see in my room example, you also have the seating group with the couch and the chair, so this is quite lovely. You have a desk you can do work at. I did that for 3 months. It's a bit tiny for proper work, but better than nothing. The bathroom itself is also alright, although the shower functions were a bit odd to me. There was only one kind of turn switch, so you could control only the strength of the water and the temperature at the same time. So if you wanted strong water pressure, it was automatically hot. Right, so let's talk about another very different aspect of the hotel, which is the breakfast. Breakfast actually quite surprised me. Generally, I felt that in some of the Hiltons I visited in the past, especially in Europe, I was not that impressed with the offering, but you actually get a very big buffet-style breakfast at the Hilton. You have a lot of savory options. Let me emphasize that because I'm more of a sweet eater in the morning. Granola, cornflakes, toast, and whatnot. I think in that regard it was a bit more geared towards Japanese customers, so you saw a lot of traditionally Japanese dishes, fish dishes, you saw a lot of noodle soup dishes and so on. So if you're into savory food, I think you can have a blast at the breakfast there. If you're more on the sweet side, it's still fine. It's just a bit more limited than what you would find in other parts of the world, I guess. But overall, the breakfast is quite impressive. One thing to mention is that it's mostly self-service for everything, so I don't think that the staff usually asks whether you would like coffee or tea, you know, when they sit you down. It's all meant to be self-service, and you can tell that just by the number of seats and also the amount of people that were there to you know, keep operations going well and to facilitate so many people. They need to do it in that way, I guess. So in terms of service, that was a little bit lacking sometimes. I think they were sometimes a bit overwhelmed, especially on weekends, with just the massive amount of people there. And you had to queue up for the breakfast very occasionally. I think I had it 3 times or so, or 4 times during my 3-month stay. So just something that's not a big deal, but yeah, it's something I've not experienced that much. I don't mind waiting though, and all the wait times were about 5 minutes or so. So the turnover is quite high, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. Right, let's talk about the lounge. The lounge is open from 12 o'clock, I believe, and you can get light snacks and drinks, non-alcoholic drinks, coffee, tea, all day around. And then of course you have the 2-hour window of proper food and alcoholic drinks, as is custom with a lot of hotels nowadays, as well as a tea time kind of thing in the afternoon. So the tea time basically just means that they put out some, cookies and maybe a cake out for an hour or so in the afternoon. And then from, I believe it was 5 to 7, there's the main food time. And the food options were quite decent, I would say, although the quality of the food wasn't super high. So sometimes it felt like some of the dishes they brought out were not as nice as they looked. But overall, I think for me, when I think about can a lounge, replace your dinner from time to time, then I would say yes, just about. The dishes were more on the cold side, so you had cold cuts. You strangely had no bread, even though they were offering cheese and ham and salami and whatnot. And you also, at some point, they kind of switched to these little kind of appetizer dishes, which I really liked. A lot of them were fish-based and they were great. You also, of course, get alcoholic beverages. So you get, Asahi beer, Tokyo craft beer. You have a selection of multiple wines, and then, of course, sparkling wine and a selection of, general spirits. And while they gave you the kind of the takeaway bags and boxes and whatnot, so you could, take away the food and grab a couple of drinks and whatnot, it's just not the same. And it feels like because Hilton kind of, as well as other hotel programs, kind of made it very easy to contain your status due to Corona. There's a bit of an inflation of hotel statuses, and that makes it a bit harder on the lounge side because it was just completely crowded. And actually on my end, I did not go to the lounge between 5 and 7 anymore around the weekend because I knew there would just be no way to find seating. Right, what else? The hotel has a pool, a spa area, and a gym. I did not try out the gym or the spa area, but the pool is actually something quite special. The downside is that if you don't have the diamond status of Hilton, at least that's how it was explained to me, you would have to pay for the pool. And that's actually quite unusual, at least for me, because I don't think I've ever experienced a hotel where you as a hotel guest had to pay separately to use the pool. Is it worth it? I'm not quite sure. I believe it cost around $20 for the first kind of time you want to try it out. I don't think there was a time limit, but basically it's probably a day pass or something. And then every other time I believe it was, let's say, $7 or so. It's not the end of the world, but it's a bit odd to me. The upside, of course, is that you don't see as many people at the pool, simply because not everyone wants to pay for it. The pool itself, I think the best way to experience it is in winter or when it's generally cold and not so pretty outside. The pool is an indoor pool, it's quite big, as you can see. You also have the jacuzzi, indoor. And then, of course, the absolute highlight is the outdoor jacuzzi. And I feel like just for that, it's worth it to at least try it once, because the feeling of sitting, yes, you can sit in the jacuzzi, outdoor jacuzzi, because it's like fairly shallow. To sit there bubbling away in this hot jacuzzi with the view of the Tokyo Tower and the Rainbow Bridge is just fantastic. I really enjoy doing that, and especially when the weather is not so great, when it's cold outside, or maybe if it's raining even, you get this really nice contrast of you know, hot jacuzzi with bad cold weather, and for me personally that was the highlight of the hotel. So besides the breakfast and the lounge, I also want to talk a little bit just quickly about the restaurants. I tried out the Japanese restaurant and also the kind of outdoor barbecue restaurant. There's a total of, I believe, 4 or 5 restaurants, so there's actually quite a lot of options. They are all more on the higher end of the price, but there's also a buffet breakfast kind of, not buffet breakfast, but buffet dinner and buffet lunch at the same place where you have the breakfast. So if you're into that, they have this option. I really liked the barbecue restaurant. Basically, it's an option that they only, or at least I believe they only have in the summer, or at least when, you know, it's warm enough to really sit outside. And how it works is it's literally a do-it-yourself kind of thing where you have to reserve a table and you have to say already what kind of meat options you want. And then you get these pre-packaged options. So there's, I think, only 3 options. 2 kind of the different meat cuts and 1 tomahawk steak, which at least for me was also a bit of a highlight. What that means is you get this really big gas grill next to your table outside in front of the hotel, and then it's usually up to you to actually grill it. And they give you a little bit of an instruction so that you don't mess it up, and it was actually not as difficult as I thought it to be with such a thick cut of a steak. It's very intuitive, and even though the hotel staff helped us a bit in the beginning, it's definitely doable and quite nice actually. And with that, of course, because it's outside on the terrace in front of the hotel, you get again these incredible sunset views and you see the Rainbow Bridge. So I feel like that's just something that the hotel really has going for it, is this amazing view that they really, you know, kind of make use by, you know, having all the restaurants and the lounge terrace and the rooms kind of facing that part of Tokyo. That's really special, and I think you don't get that in comparable hotels in the middle of Tokyo. Right, and then the other restaurant, of course, this is the Japanese restaurant, and this one is a bit more on the higher end of the price, although they do have some lunch and dinner sets that are not too expensive, more around $30. But they also can go up easily to $100+ depending on what type of food you want. This one I only tried out once, and I got this kind of menu where you could try from these 3 different sub-restaurants they have inside. So they have a sushi restaurant which focuses on sushi and sashimi style of fish. They have a tempura restaurant, which is the deep fried vegetables and meat. And they also have a teppanyaki restaurant, which is kind of a meat on a grill. I'm not sure how it's defined, but it was fantastic. So I think in general in Japan you will always find amazing food, and you should probably not be disappointed with this. Is it worth the price? Not sure. I mean, you'd expect to pay a bit more at hotels, but it's nice that you have the option and it can go there. And lastly, I want to talk about kind of the overall experience or the service. I really have to say that the hotel staff went out of their way to accommodate any, you know, issues or requests I had. That might have been because I was also one of the few long-term guests. That one I don't know, but they were incredibly helpful, and especially in a country like Japan where you might encounter, you know, translation issues, or where, you know, making bookings and whatnot of tours and tickets and whatnot can be a bit more difficult because of the language barrier. It's really helpful to have staff that can help you with this. And especially the bell desk, like the concierge area, they were incredibly helpful to, you know, help you with any of these types of things. So overall the service was fantastic, and I especially noticed that the room cleaning was very fast. So I would usually leave my room during my lunch break. I was working from home in the hotel room and would hang out the sign for my room to be cleaned. And more often than not, I came back after an hour or so and it was already perfectly clean. The response time was amazing. So really, hats off to them. But yeah, so let me conclude. Should you stay in the Hilton Tokyo Odaiba? Or rather, I would like to rephrase that. Who should stay in there? I think the location is a bit of a thing to consider. If it's your first time in Tokyo or going to Tokyo and you really want to see a lot of different spots, especially, you have the Shinjuku, Shibuya, Tokyo Station and whatnot, I would propose you go to the more central hotels. If you want to stay within the Hilton chain, there's a Hilton Shinjuku, there's a Conrad in Shimbashi. Those are more central and will be easier to actually go to all these spots. If you really focus on having, for example, the pool, the jacuzzi, if you bring a family and you also want to have some kind of more leisure time, then I can see that the Hilton Tokyo Odaiba is a really good choice to go. As well as any kind of staycation travelers, people who, let's say, expats who live in other cities of Japan and they want to come to Tokyo and they want kind of a good mix of sightseeing but also relaxation. I think the Hilton Odaiba is a great choice. So yeah, you pay around, I believe, around $100 per night or so. Depends on when, of course, try to avoid public holidays and whatnot, but I think the value is quite good and you can have a really nice stay there. Just keep in mind the points I mentioned about who should stay in the hotel. But yeah, I had a great time living there. And I'd be happy to go back, maybe for a staycation or so. And that's about it. I hope I could give you a very, balanced kind of review of the hotel. There are other things for a long-term stay that are very important, and I will make a different video on that. But this is it for now. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you have any questions, any recommendations or whatnot, please feel free to share them. And I will see you in the next one. Cheers.